Welcome back to The Narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Farrier. Belize has become one of just four CARICOM countries to recently adopt the protocols for full freedom of movement across the region. This development means greater opportunities for work, study, and residence for CARICOM nationals and marks another step toward deepening regional integration. But it also raises questions about preparedness, economic impact, and how citizens will adapt. Joining me now on the program is Kevin Arthurs of Belize to discuss what this decision means for his country and for the wider CARICOM. Welcome to the program, Mr. Arthurs.
Good morning. It's a pleasure, and thanks for the invitation to join into the national conversation. I look forward
It's,
to it.
it's good to have you here. What were the main reasons behind Belize's decision to adopt this? As a lot of countries within the grouping of CARICOM have been dragging their feet on it. Some saying they're not fully ready yet. These four countries, and Belize included, coming forward. What is the main reason, as far as you know, behind this decision to adopt the protocols for full freedom of movement at this time?
I believe that there is a wider um, motivation for it. I think Belize has always been a country that has been a pioneer, even in the legal field, for certain regional issues. And I think it's consistent with the current administration's progressive views of integration and of economic development. The present government has taken a different view, a more aggressive view to its place economically in the world and in the Caribbean. And I think that this is consistent with that. I also don't believe that the motivations for it um, completely ignore some of the same things that are questions and challenges in this process.
And so, how prepared is Belize? Its infrastructure, its immigration, labor systems, social services, those things that will impact on having more people and from different cultural backgrounds come into the country to accommodate an expected increase in intra-regional movement.
I think the collective of countries, the pioneering four, as I call them, could not be more different. Um, I heard the ambassador to CARICOM from Barbados say that it is a good sample of countries. Belize in the far west, Barbados in the far east, and the other two countries somewhere in the middle. Um, I, I think that the importance of the whole question of migration and who we are as a people is really the fundamental question that we're answering in practical ways. In preparing for today's conversation, there were two quotations that I thought framed the sort of thinking and importance to this entire question of free and full movement. If you allow me, the first is from President Donald Trump, who in his UN speech on September 23rd framed the broader issue in this way. He said, and I quote, the number one political issue of our time is the crisis of uncontrolled migration. Your countries are being ruined. Now, I wanted to take that quote and contrast it with the statement or address of PM Motley in her um, on the eve of the opening of the full and free movement, where she said, we are on the cusp of a change that will touch the lives of our people across the Caribbean region and strengthen our nation at home. She recognized that some people were anxious, and she said and recognized that they have questions. And she quoted, and I quote her by saying, you want to know what will happen, exactly how it will affect your families, your jobs, your children, and your future. And she noted, which I particularly respected, she said, all your questions and feelings are valid. In Belize, we've been preparing from, I would say, from the signing of the treaty, the revised Treaty of Chagaramos, but on the ground, I know that the government agents have been actively working on this expected transition for the past 3 years. In Belize, we have sort of divided the preparedness into several areas. Um, those areas are immigration, they are education, and in each area, we've made significant steps: banking, transportation. So, for example, we've already prepared the stamp that you would require, and the agencies and stakeholders have been communicating from things such as transitions of families to their incorporation to the school system, and the need to sort of harmonize the receiving of report cards and the synchronizing of um, learning outcomes. In the area of um, social security, there is move afoot and in the process of synchronizing the transfer and application of uh, benefits. And so we have been active. You know, one of the interesting things for me in speaking with some of the agencies in doing research for this interview were simple things that you would not consider as to how similar we are, but how different. Just a simple thing like driver's license. In
Mm.
Belize, the driver's license is valid for 1 year. In Barbados, I am made to understand it's 10 years. In Barbados, again, the driving age, I believe, is 16, while in Belize it is 17. So the question would arise as to what would obtain in circumstances where somebody who is 16, for example, who has a valid driver's license in Barbados comes to live in Belize, and how would we deal with that? Now, those are questions which we are working on, and questions to which I believe we are shortly being able to answer. My intelligent guess would be that they would have to accord to local laws, particularly in that area. Um, but I don't think it would be a significant issue because it's only a year. Um, and in the meantime, you still have other issues that we're not looking at, which is the simple fact that in Belize,
Such as.
we drive on the right hand side of the road while my colleagues in this
Mm.
pioneering tour drive on the other end.
Mhm.
And so there are challenges which are going to have to be reconciled to my mind, and the default will have to be local laws.
What do you see happening on the ground in Belize as people come and I mean, we travel and we have to assimilate into different cultures and different laws and ways of doing things. But how do you see all of this playing out in the first blush in your country?
I think for any guinea pig, for any pioneering or pilot project, it
Mm.
will be riddled with frustration and identification of where the challenges are. And I think this will be probably worse on the ground. But I'm confident in the personnel. For example, we have Ms. Teresa Gideon at our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, who holds the desk to deal with the transition. And I believe that it is the nature of being a pioneer in an area that you have to face these challenges. I think the persons who are going to make this transition are using the opportunity that is there are some of the bolder persons. And so I think they will have the durability to do so. I'm not worried about the institutional shocks as much as the cultural shocks for those
Culture.
coming in. I think Belize is one of the most, I've lived in the Caribbean, in two countries in the Caribbean. And Belize is culturally significantly different from our Caribbean brothers and sisters. And I think that adjustment on the ground is going to be more challenging. The positive in it, though, is that from every analyst that I have listened to, including Peter Wickham, there's not supposed to be a significant spike. Even locally, we're looking at possibly, officially, maybe about a 10% increase of persons
Mhm.
utilizing the system. So
Mhm.
it gives us the opportunity to have a manageable inflow and to allow us to work out the kinks with those um, first persons.
Mhm. And what specific economic opportunities does Belize hope to gain from the freer movement of CARICOM nationals into its borders?
You know, Belize is a very interesting country. We are polygamous in very many ways politically. Belize is uniquely placed to be what we call a Caribbean country in the heart of Central America. So Belize sits in two economic uh, zones: the Caribbean through CARICOM and the CSME, and also through our Central American brothers and sisters through what we call SICA and the SICA, which is the economic version or counterpart to the CSME. And so what Belize does, it opens markets not just to our Caribbean brothers, but also to Central America. And that opportunity is one which can be exploited for very simple reasons. One, Belize's economy has been taking an upward turn and has been one of the commended economies post-COVID. We're largely dependent on agricultural exports and the like, but I believe that what opportunities arise in the exploitation of the large landmass that Belize has, um, and to utilize that aspect of it to produce food for the Caribbean. Um, I believe that food security is an interesting opportunity for us. Because when I talk about landmass, when you look at the sizes of countries, Belize of the four is by far the largest. Belize has 8,887 square miles. It's a population of
with currently less than 500,000 people in population. Is it, what's your population size?
423,000 people as of the last census. So, and you're looking at, in contrast, the next largest country in this pioneering four is actually Barbados with 166 square miles. Now, one of our districts here in Belize, we're divided into 6 districts or parishes. One of our largest district is over 2,000 square miles. So imagine the opportunities in terms of agricultural opportunities. And we can also, for thoroughness, note that St. Vincent and Grenadines is 151 square miles, and Grenada is 131 square miles, according to my research. So there is opportunity in terms of landmass, but there's also the opportunity to collaborate to see what opportunities might not necessarily work because of the conditions in these other countries, but might take root in Belize, and to be able to spread that to our Caribbean and to our Central American counterparts.
Some countries worry, even at the level of leadership, about job displacement when borders are open. How, though, that fear that is there, does it exist in Belize, and how is the government dealing with it? How, those concerns about protecting local workers while still honoring the protocols?
Yeah, that's a natural question. And I think that there has to be some boldness and the attitude that history would absorb you, because that natural fear will arise. I think the bigger question that has been arisen, because the question is, what is different between what obtained before and what obtains now? And I think the bigger question is what does full and free movement do to our national identities and to who an immigrant is? Um, in the past, the fear was contained, to my mind, because we knew who an immigrant was under the CSME. They fell under certain categories: artisans, teachers, nurses, persons with university degrees. And so you could picture who that person was. I think what will exaggerate the fear now is the thought that any individual, a taxi driver from St. Vincent and Grenadines, could take his family and come live in Belize. And Belize already has challenges with immigration. In Belize, we have, on the last amnesty program that we had a total of between 60,000 undocumented persons in the country. Now, this is the same problem America is having in terms of their shift in immigration policy. And now there is at least a theory that it is possible for us to have pretty much the same challenges of undocumented along with regulated immigrants. And so it creates a bigger question of immigration and or immigration policy and development. And I don't think that we have put full thought into it. I think we've been relying on the numbers. I again, I quote Peter Wickham in an interview where he said that the numbers aren't largely different. There should not be a spike In Belize, for example, we've had a total of 450 applications and certificates which have been issued since we began the program in 2006. Of that, 60% have been Belizean. And between the other countries, my numbers are that maybe you have 2% from Guyana, from Grenada, and very small numbers from the other countries. So the expectation is that we won't see a flood. And I think if you don't see the flood, then the fear is not exaggerated. And it's then we're able to process it and to acclimatize the culture and the country to it. And I think that is an extremely good thing. What I also wanted to point out is sometimes and let me frame it this way. I had a friend who said, Belize is probably an afterthought in CARICOM. When people think about Caribbean countries, there's a connection between the OECS, Barbados, Guyana, and Belize, because of proximity issues, probably will be insulated because to get to Belize, a ticket from Barbados to Belize is about 2,000 US, and you have to one route is to go through the United States, and so you have visa issues and the like. The other route is through Panama, which is a little bit more expensive, and so Belize might not see the fare. It won't be like there's a plane of 10,000 people coming in a week.
How will Belize balance security concerns with the commitment to hassle-free movement?
Under the agreements in relation to preparations for this, there is the opportunity for countries to reject persons who are either a threat or potentially are a threat to national security, or who are unable to support themselves, and they have to provide proof. It's almost similar to situations where you're granted visas, where you have to show proof of being able to sustain yourself for some period of time. And so I believe that it won't be perfect. There will be some threats in there, but there is provision there that allows for expulsion of those persons who do qualify or disqualify themselves.
How are Belizeans responding to the adoption of full freedom of movement? Are they cautious, supportive of the idea, resistant? What's happening on the ground with the average Belizean in that where that is concerned?
So the timing of this is interesting. Belize is currently a bit distracted. It is facing the issue of the threat to our national or territorial integrity, and we have a claim before the ICJ, and that has really been taking a lot of national attention. Of course, there are also other national issues which would take priority. So that if you ask me the average Belizean and you ask them about this issue, I would tell you that maybe about 60% of them are either unaware of it or don't have sufficient information on it. And unfortunately, I don't believe that would be much different in any other country. And so I don't think that we can really assess it by the average person and the way they feel, but more so by the impact it will have on entrepreneurs, artisans, and professionals.
But certainly the views of the ordinary man, as we call them, living in a country, their
Extremely
response and their
important.
reaction to any particular issue eventually
You see,
could determine how well the integration happens.
Belize is a very welcoming society. We're a society of immigrants. Like I said, we have Belize is I call Belize the United States of Central America. If you can't get to the States, you really come here to live if you're not trying to get to the States eventually. And so, because we have a migrant thinking migration, we are able to incorporate different persons. So you're looking at, even in terms of people who come to Belize, you're looking at people from Central America, from the different nations in Central America who come. And Belize itself is a multicultural society. We have maybe about 4 or 5 distinct ethnic groups. And so the challenges of incorporation, I don't think, or acceptance of persons coming won't be an issue, particularly at the rate that they're expected to come in. I think the issue would, again, arise for the common person, and their concerns and fears would be where there is a mass migration. And I don't foresee that to be the issue here. These are welcoming people.
And certainly across any of the borders of the nations that have signed on to this, these four countries, one may not expect an exodus of people from one country into the next, certainly. I wanted to turn my attention to the comments made recently by the Trinidad and Tobago Prime Minister Kamala Persad-Bissessar when she presented at the United Nations General Assembly, when she said the Caribbean cannot be a zone of peace. And she has been one of the main cheerleaders of Donald Trump and his military actions in the Southern Caribbean. Trinidad may even quite possibly used as a staging area for the invasion of Venezuela. Despite the issues that countries within the grouping have, your issues on your border with Guatemala, Guyana's issues on its border with Venezuela, and our problems with drug trafficking in the Caribbean, all of that notwithstanding, what do you make of a member of CARICOM, while the rest of CARICOM promotes the region as a zone of peace, goes on a global stage and says, we're not a zone of peace, and the United States really ought to have the kind of free reign that it has been having, executing people at will on Caribbean waters. What do you make of her statements in that
Wow,
context?
I haven't heard the statement, but your version of it, um, as it relates to full and free movement, I do believe that if we were to have uh, military problems in the Caribbean, this will also impact the movement of persons. And so the question as to us being a region of peace, to me, we have been. Um, I can think of maybe Noir, maybe Grenada has come the closest to any sort of coup. Trinidad um, and Guyana have had their issues internally. But in terms of war, we are peace-loving people. And so I don't think that view would be a pervasive view, and I'm not sure it would be supported by the evidence. I'm not sure in what context she made it, but how I will comment on it is that if there is an issue of um, an, a disruption of the peace, that it will affect migration. The other issue, though, that I'd like to comment on, though, is how dependent we are on international aid and influence. And I think a lot of decisions that we make internationally, we don't really have a choice on. It's dictated by international monetary agencies, by our debt servicing, by our vulnerabilities to natural disasters. And of all the concerns that I do have with this issue of full and free movement, because I do have my own reservations, I do believe it's a deliberate approach, a deliberate controlled approach for us to dictate how we develop as a country. Um, One of the questions that was asked was whether or not I was disappointed in the fact that some of the larger players, like Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, um, have not been the pioneers in this. And I have to be honest that I was a bit disappointed because to me, full and free movement is it's kind of like taking a frog and putting it in a pot and raising the temperature. Because what this is really the reincarnation of federation. And federation itself was a rejected proposal. And I would think that to redeem itself, the soul of the Caribbean, some of the larger players, would have taken the lead. Um, just last week, Time Magazine named President Ali as next in the 100 next people. Guyana is projected to be one of the most aggressive and explosive economies in the world. They're going to need workers to build roads, to build schools, hospitals. Um, in from since 2019, they have attracted $7.5 billion in revenue of oil. And so I would think that a country like Guyana would be one of the first persons, one of the first countries to say, let me be part of this pioneering project because I can use the help. I will have the money to pay for it. And the opportunities are here. Even the landmass is here. Jamaica, on the other end, I thought as well as one of the older brothers. I mean, Jamaica next to Haiti is one of the countries that got their independence first, 1962, I believe. And so I thought that the older brothers that have more infrastructure, that have a more keen eye, will be able to jump in first and to be the ones and to have the smaller ones follow. It is a mixed bag because Barbados is in this, Barbados and Belize are in this first pioneering group. But the bigger boys, to me, have to redeem themselves and to embrace this moment as an opportunity for the Caribbean to strengthen itself and to get back or take its place as one of the leading economies in the world.
We're out of time though, Kevin, but I want to just ask you
It's been
quickly.
a pleasure.
You said earlier that you have your own reservations. While you support this, you also have your reservations about it. What is your biggest? We have about 30 seconds left. What is your biggest reservation about this? Full freedom of movement.
My biggest reservation is that we go halfway through the process, that some of the smaller countries join in, and we're not joined at the party by our bigger brothers, and we miss the opportunity. And I think that the groundwork has not been put in place. It's sort of like we have a pre-arranged marriage, and we have to fall in love while we are already
Well, you're
have the
already
rings on.
hitched, and
Yeah, you're already hitched.
and you're not sure if you'll end up hating each other.
You're not even sure if you get married because what if the person runs away? And I'm talking specifically about the bigger parties here. And I don't think that the communication between countries it's happening on a on a leadership on a high level basis, but I don't think that we're communicating where it really matters. The average Bayesian doesn't have much communication or connection to Belize. I think the average Bayesian doesn't have a lot of communication or connection with anyone in this pioneering forum. And I think that is a noise and a bridge that we have not put sufficient things in place to accommodate. I think that there should have been a transitional task force to sort of gone into the feeling and the sentiments of it. I know the challenging there is you serve too much sentiment and you have the issue um, of it not going through. But we have to ensure that we have a timeline for the other players to come to the table. That is my largest concern.
Concerned about it. All right, I want to be out of time. I want to thank you so much for joining me on the narrative, Kevin Athers. It was a pleasure to have you, and good luck with
Same
full
here.
freedom of movement. We look forward to the
Thank
day
you.
Grenada joins on.
Excellent.
This is the narrative. I'm your storyteller, Callistra Faria. That was Kevin Arthurs, a political scientist in Belize. We were discussing full freedom of movement. Belize being one of 4 countries, including St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Barbados, and Dominica, who recently signed on and agreed to protocols for full freedom of movement, meaning that nationals can go across the borders of each of those countries without the usual barriers of work permits and visas where they apply and whatnot. Moment we come back.